So the movie we decided to analyze was Inside Out. A quick description of the character: her name is Riley Anderson. She's a young girl who's about to turn 12 when she's taken away from all of her childhood friends when her family moves across the country to San Francisco. So as she deals with this tremendous loss, the audience is taken into her mind to watch her emotions handle the changes she faces. So these emotions that are portrayed include disgust, fear, joy, sadness, and anger. The psychological disorder to be diagnosed: we believe Riley is experiencing symptoms of depression, and we know this is relevant to the DSM-5 category because she exhibits all 3 Ds of disorder. So the first one is deviance, when she's abnormally distant from her family after the move. She's becoming more down, less optimistic. She usually never fights with her family, and after she moves, she starts acting out. Distressing: she left her best friend since childhood behind. She feels very isolated in this new place, and this same friend is moving on and making new friends without her back in her home in Minnesota. Dysfunction: when it all becomes too overwhelming, she breaks down on her first day of school when being introduced to her classmates, as you can see in the picture. So it's very abnormal for her to even cry in like a school environment, but she is because she's around new people, and the teachers asked her to describe where she came from, and she starts to break down because she misses her what she believes is her true home. The diagnosis is supported by Riley having an overall change in attitude. She goes from being happy to being troubled and lonely while trying to accept her new home in San Francisco. With this new low level of frustration tolerance, she's unable to participate in the activities she loves to do, which includes hockey. So she attends the school tryouts for the hockey team, but when she doesn't perform well, she gets upset and quits. So she's trying to adjust, but at the same time, she just feels frustrated that she's not in the home that she's comfortable with. The character Joy, or the emotion Joy, who's in charge of Riley's happiness, can no longer prevent her sadness. Riley has many little episodes where we see she's more irritable and out of character. Her major episode is when she decides to run away from San Francisco and go back to Minnesota, where she almost loses herself. So this is another example of like dysfunction and distress where she's acting out, and she even decides to run away, which she would never do if she was back in Minnesota. Some missing symptoms. Some of the things that might contradict our predictions is the fact that in the duration of the movie, the way that it was presented, we don't exactly know how long she's been experiencing these symptoms. She does start out in the movie being 11, and she does turn 12 by the end of the movie. So we're kind of assuming that it passes this 2-week period of symptoms, but we're not exactly sure just because of how the movie is presented. And she also lacks suicidal thoughts and tendencies, so we never see any like thoughts of death or like thoughts of ending her life. Some treatment plans. First, to figure out the best options for treatment is to figure out the cause of this disorder, and as we found out from earlier circumstances that Riley is experiencing social withdrawal, cognitive therapy would be the best long-term option due to the fact that overall restructuring of these thoughts of isolation and distance that she currently feels around others is only temporary. With this approach, she can move at her own speed to rewire these thoughts of abandonment. The issues that could arise with this method is the fact that she could be unwilling to change her thought process to be more positive. As she's pretty young, she could be immature and like really not want to change and not want to get used to the fact that she now lives in San Francisco instead of Minnesota. Due to the fact that being in such a depressive mood can make a person stuck and unmotivated to try new things, so that includes Riley. If this therapy does not help with her irrational thoughts, another plan of action could be trying the humanistic approach, and this method could be helpful due to its constant reassurance of unconditional positive regard for the client, so making sure that Riley feels that she's not alone and that her needs and feelings are valued and very important, especially to those who she loves. So psychological disorders in films, in general, the portrayal of disorders in films create specific stereotypes about how someone is supposed to behave based on what disorder this film claims this person has. So this negatively influences the public perception of mental disorders. The reason being, we believe we can make assumptions about disorders based on the way they were presented to us in fictional plots of movies. So we feel like we can diagnose someone just because of something we've seen in a movie one time, but it's not really psychologically backed, if that makes sense. We don't really have the knowledge to make these assumptions just from fictional plots of movies. And that's our presentation. Thank you.